Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
We're in a new setting here in the lower theater. We may have some technical issues as we go along, but bear with us and we'll make sure we get around to everybody. I am about 30 feet distant from the screen where the Zoom people are attending. So I'm going to have to rely on town manager and perhaps others to bring those who wish to speak to my attention. I'll get to that in just a second. It's my pleasure to call the 2022 Rockingham School and Rockingham Town annual meetings to order. In keeping with past practice and tradition, we alternate the school and town meetings. This year, being an even year, we're going to open with the school meeting. I'm going to go through some of the protocols before we get started on that. A couple things to remember. Keep yourself muted unless you're called on to speak. And if you do want to speak, make sure your wishes are known by using the function on there so either the town manager or one of the other runners can be aware that you're asking to speak. In addition to the live audience here in the Opera House, we have 50 some odd people signed in on Zoom. We're asking that you do sign in on the chat. We can see your names, but we don't record who's showing up on the screen. So if you would sign in on chat, that's merely for record keeping purposes. In accordance with the legislative wishes and as confirmed by the Secretary of State, only those here in person, in attendance in this room tonight are going to be able to vote on the two articles that we're going to have up for a vote this evening. Those of you on Zoom can participate in discussions, but you will not be counted in the voting on Articles 2 and Articles 11 for the school and Articles 1 and 11 for the school, and later on in 2 and 14 for the town. At this point, Zoom may be the most hated word in the English language. Anybody in the room, cell phones, pagers, all those things that make noises, including whoever's sitting next to you, put those on silent, airplane mode, vibrate, something that will not disrupt us during the meeting. And at this time, I'd ask those who are present here to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we've already talked about those participating by Zoom, raising your hand, unmuting yourself. For those of you who are here this evening in person, we have a mic set up on the stand over to my right, to the right in the room. You can pass that around, or you can come up and take a seat there to use that microphone on that side of the room. We have a second wireless mic on this side, and JP Cass-Wright has offered to bring that over to anybody on my left who wishes to speak. Please don't try to speak without the mic. Particularly for those on Zoom, they will never hear you. And I know we all think we have loud voices. Please use the microphone so we don't have to repeat things any more than necessary. We'll keep that powered up so you can use that. When you go to speak, identify yourself. If you are a non-resident in the room, and do we have any non-residents here tonight? We do. Okay. Do we have any? Okay, we have a couple, 2, 3. All right. Obviously, you're not voting. You're welcome. You can also participate if the body allows you to participate. We may have, I don't know, municipal officials who are non-residents. I'm going to allow them to speak at will, unless the body tells me otherwise. So. In the event of an emergency, we're down in the basement, we're in the cellar. We have a although you probably won't want to try to get through there, there is an emergency exit out through the kitchen to my left. You have to enter out and go upstairs. If you enter, come back out here in the hallway. As you go out, there's an exit to the left, which will bring you up to the alley next to Wyndham Antiques. If you go to the right and go up, there are two exits. We have an inside staircase and an outside staircase. They both empty out into the alley between here and People's Bank. So one exit up front, one in the hallway, two upstairs. So follow the signs, leave orderly. Let's hope we don't have to use them. If we lose the Zoom connection at any time, we'll pause the meeting until we get reconnected to make sure that everybody who wants to participate can do so. And I'm sure you've never been in a Zoom meeting where you've lost a connection. As always, we're going to conduct the meeting with Robert's Rules of Order. And just to be safe, I brought 3 copies. So if anybody wants to read along with me, they have been modified in some occasions by state law. We will follow the state law in those regards. We can't change the state law, but we can choose to modify Robert's rules by a vote of 2/3 of the body here. I can't remember in my lifetime, and I'm old, that we've ever voted to change the rules. They're pretty well known. We've all followed them. They're relatively simple. They're slightly different rules for municipalities, but I think we all know the rules. Motions, amendments, voting on the amendments, voting on the main motion. We'll come back around to that as well if it comes up. And as following the words of Mike Hardy and David Buckley and Judge Tom Bowles before me, I expect everybody to be civil and polite. As they used to say, we're all neighbors, we're all friendly. We'd like to leave as friends and neighbors because we're going to have to live together for a long time. Questions are to be directed to me for passing on to either someone who can answer it. I'll answer the questions that I can. Otherwise, I'll direct it to a member of one of the boards or to one of the municipal officials. And I see we have looks like a question in the front row. Is that Steve?
Better. Stephen Crofter. And I'm just concerned that the warning indicates that voters may attend by Zoom. And so the fact that you're not allowing the Zoom attendees to vote seems to me to be contradictory to the warning.
I won't dispute it. I'm telling you that we have been informed as late as this afternoon by the Secretary of State that only those who are personally in attendance here in the room may be allowed to vote.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, thank you. It's too bad the warning doesn't indicate that, but I apologize to the people that are on Zoom. Thanks.
So, yeah, that's why we announced that. I mean, it's part of the reason why we announced it early on, if they do want to come down. But frankly, that ruling by or opinion from the Secretary of State's office today was new to me as well. So, but I'm obligated to follow the warning. The advice from the Secretary of State's office came into me this afternoon as well. The question was raised and they answered it for us. We talked about only registered voters can speak unless the assembly by 2/3 of a vote allows someone else to speak. I'm going to, unless I hear any objections, I'm going to allow those municipal officials to speak in any event. I don't want to get overly technical, but I'm going to make the rulings as well as I can along the way. My rulings can be challenged. If you want an explanation of a ruling, I'm happy to do that. If that doesn't satisfy you, all it takes is a request to challenge the ruling and a vote of the body. The debate on the motion to appeal, the ruling of the chair is also in order. So you can challenge it. I can agree with it, disagree with it. You can then put it to the body of the assembly as to whether or not the ruling should be upheld or overturned. And I've had judges sustaining and overturning my objections all the time. The voting tomorrow will take place at the Masonic Temple? Thank you. Masonic Temple. I want to be sure we're back. And it'll open at 8 and it'll go until 7 o'clock. So you've got 11 hours to get down there and make your voices heard. We're going to ask people to limit their speaking on a particular article to 2 times for a total of 10 minutes. I'm not running a clock, but I can generally tell if you've used up anywhere close to 10 minutes. 10 minutes is an awfully long time to speak on one topic. If it's been covered extensively, don't feel the need to repeat yourself or repeat what somebody else has said, just so you can get your 10 minutes in, or you can use your second shot at or bite of the apple. We want it full discussion, and we'll allow for discussion as long as the body is willing to entertain it. At some point, somebody can make a motion to call the question. You don't just jump up and call it. Bring it to my attention, Mr. Moderator, I wish to call the question. I'll ask you if you're ready to call the question. If it's in the affirmative, discussion will cease and we'll go on to voting. There's only 2 articles we're worried about tonight. And I don't imagine either one of them, well, I don't know, I won't say it. I don't know if either one of them is going to generate a lot of discussion or not. Excuse me, under the last article that we bring up is the one about other business, not on the agenda or not in the warning, which does not involve the expenditure of funds. And typically those are brought up for, sometimes it's a social cause, sometimes it's a advice to the boards as to what they would like to see in the future. A lot of different things. They're non-binding and we can't spend money. I call them a feel-good article. If it gets too far off the track, I'll probably rule it out of order and we'll cut it off right there. But that is one last chance to bring up articles or bring up a motion on a topic that has not previously been voted on and is entitled to be heard. With that, I would like to introduce to you your school directors and superintendent. Starting from my left, Superintendent Andy Haas, Board Chair Priscilla Lambert, Board Member Megan Applegate, Jason Benson is attending by Zoom, and James Jim or Jiggs McAuliffe, I believe, is also by Zoom.
I am here under, I appear under Hardy Merrill.
Well, that's a switch.
Yeah.
That must be the class of 1962.
Pretty close. Yeah.
One of the advantages of living too long in the same place. Turning to the warning for the school district meeting, we have 11 articles. I will go through the articles in turn. I've been given the names of the board member who's going to introduce each article. I will read the article. The person who's going to make the motion on the article will make their motion. We will look for a second. We need a second before we can have discussion. I will then turn to the maker of the motion to ask if they wish to address the motion before we have anybody else address that. So I read the motion is made, seconded, and the maker of the motion gets to go first. Are we clear? All right. Article 1, to hear the reports of the Rockingham Town School District officers for the last year and to take action thereon. And Priscilla Clough, I believe you intend to make that motion.
Yeah, that's my maiden name and that's what he knew me by. So Priscilla Lambert's going to make that motion.
Oh.
I move that we accept the Rockingham Town School District officers' reports for last year.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Motion's been made and seconded to hear the reports, to accept the reports of the Rockingham Town School District officers for last year and to take action thereon. And Priscilla, you have the floor.
Thank you. In your report, it gives the chair's report, the Superintendent Andrew Haas's report, the principal's report from Bellows Falls Middle School Principal Sue Johnson and Assistant Principal Dana Quadro, Central Elementary School Principal Carrie Kennedy, and Saxon Server Elementary School Principal Laura Hazard. Please note that the minutes from last year were produced by Kathleen Needhawk for our meeting, but they were inadvertently left out of the town report. They are mentioned in the town report, but they are not in there on page 14. I'm going to read from my report, and I think some of the other members there would like to read from that, or at least comment on theirs in the order of the ones that I gave. When this year started, all of us thought it would be easier than the previous year. We were so hopeful that we would be back to normal. However, if anything, this year has proven more difficult. Each day tested our patience and ability to achieve our goals. We wanted a chance to embrace each other as we had in the past, but found the need to continue wearing masks and social distancing. We longed for family get-togethers and school programs where we could see student progress in person. As we look toward the future, we continue to hope for a return to normal and that soon we will be able to enjoy more of these types of experiences. We are blessed to live in this community in Vermont and have an educational team who cares so deeply for our students and families. Every day they care for our children and adjust to the challenges they face that require them to adapt to changing guidelines, enrollment difficulties as a result of illnesses, and constant disruption of their plans. They have my admiration and appreciation for all their fortitude and ability to help our children learn in such a challenging situation. Our families are also to be appreciated. This has not been easy for any of them. The disruptions they had to be faced whenever quarantining was required and the additional supports needed to overcome changes in family schedules and daycare issues easily taxed many of them on any given day. I wish to say thank you to all of them for hanging in there and having faith in our schools. Your children are amazing and have shown resilience and the ability to adapt to all the changes required of them. We've seen a transfer to the hybrid model for meetings, which does allow those who are unable to attend in person to participate. This has increased attendance and supported our goal of increased community engagement. We've had changes in administration and office personnel this school year. We welcomed Andrew Haas as our new principal and Susan Johnson as our new Bellows Falls Middle School principal. They, along with Laura Hazard, principal at Saxons River Elementary, and Carrie Kennedy, principal at Central Elementary School, have provided much needed information at board meetings. We are looking forward to there being a new business office manager to work on financial problems, hopefully soon. We've worked hard to complete a more realistic budget for next year. The central office staff and our three principals have looked at actual expenditures and the needs for each of the three schools to arrive at recommendations in developing a more accurate budget. This has resulted in a decrease from last year of over $1 million in the budget that's being presented for approval. Our equalized student costs are down by 17.4% for last year. We feel this budget is supportive of our schools and school educators while remaining fiscally responsible to the taxpayers. COVID has impacted all of us. Our students have missed having a regular school year for the last 2 years. As a result, we have been awarded federal and state grants to support our students in returning to in-person learning from the hybrid, remote learning, and homeschooling situations that were prevalent last year. Our educational teams have the opportunity to address the inconsistencies in students' educational programs. They are in the process of quantifying academic progress and comparing it to previous years. As a result, our school teams are increasing programs to address social emotional needs and academic skill levels. Our food service continues to support students and families, making meals available for all students, while utilizing farm-to-school products to increase quality and lower the cost to our district. We've also had changes in our board this year. I wish to thank Jason Benson, Megan Applegate, and our new member, James McAuliffe, for their service and all they have done to step up and help me with transitioning to becoming your chair. Serving on the board can be difficult as members balance providing a great education for our students and remaining fiscally responsible to our taxpayers. With the work over the past months, I wish to commend each of them on their ability to do both of these things. I appreciate the ideas each one of them has brought to our meetings. Respectfully submitted, Priscilla Lambert, Rockingham School Board Chair. And if it is possible to turn over some of my time to the other members, Ray, or to go on to Mr. Haas.
This is a period for discussion. If any board member wish to comment on the motion, you want to do so at the appropriate time.
And our other member, district, like Andy, would like to say something, I think.
Superintendent Haas, anything to add to the comments?
Thank you. First, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And as Priscilla said, I think that it's an understatement that this year has been quite challenging for all of us. And I feel that the success of bringing this budget to you is not, it's a collective effort of our principals, but also all of our administrators throughout the district who worked really hard to, as Priscilla mentioned, look at expenditures and come up with a real number for the costs of the district. Overall, the SU budget was also decreased by $940,000, which is almost a 15% decrease. Again, a lot of it, and it's been in the papers and out there, is the material misstatements that our auditors found. And we were able to rectify those, which allowed us to put together the budget that's before you. You know, I think that the challenges that we continue to face in moving forward, we're using ESSER funds. We've received almost $20 million in 3 different ESSER funds to support our students. We're continuing to look at how to expend those, but a lot of that is being used to help support a lot of the interventions that we're doing in the different buildings. Yeah, so I'll leave it there.
Does anyone wish to speak as part of the discussion with respect to Article 1, which is the motion to accept the reports of the officers for the past year? All right. Hearing none, I will reread the question and then we will ask for your vote. It has been moved and seconded to accept the reports of the Rockingham Town School District officers for the last year and to take action thereon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and the motion is passed. Article 2. Shall the voters of the Rockingham Town School District approve the school board to appropriate the sum of $9,697,976.38, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $17,657.95 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 17.4% less than spending for the current year. This article will be voted on by Australian ballot tomorrow, but I understand that Jiggs is expecting to make this motion.
Ray, do you want me to read it again?
Well, you need to reiterate the motion. So you would, I said that it was, shall we? Your language would be, I move the voters, etc.
Yeah, I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $9,697,976.38, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that the proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $17,657.95 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 17.4% less than spending for the current year.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Mrs. Lambert. Is there discussion on Article 2? And as the maker of the motion, Jiggs, you have the floor.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to apologize to the taxpayers for the financial report that's included in our booklet. I personally don't think that's informative to show you a detailed listing of the budget. I think it'd be much better to show summaries and some analysis. But anyway, the reason for that presentation is because of the chaos that has existed for the last couple of years in our business office. Unfortunately, that problem has still not been solved. There's a lot of blame to go around. We won't go there. But again, bear with us as we, as Andy has said, we have tried to put this budget together. I sincerely hope that the number I've just mentioned, the 9,000,007, is accurate. I personally, as well as the board, were involved in the putting together the Rockingham budget, and Priscilla and myself worked on the supervisory union budget committee to put that budget together. I think the staff at the superintendent's office and the staff in Rockingham, our principals, have done a very good job to accurately estimate what they feel the cost will be. But again, I don't have a great deal of confidence in the numbers because quite frankly, we haven't shown credibility in the last, certainly in the last year since I've been on, the last few months since I've been on the board. However, having said that, the fact that everybody worked hard to put these together, I sincerely, on behalf of the board, I sincerely recommend that the voters tomorrow approve this budget. As I think Priscilla mentioned, the budget is down $1 million. I have not been able to verify the $1 million reduction, but the 9,000,006 is something that we have reviewed. And as I said, the reason for this uncertainty is the problems that we have in the business office. I know from looking at the screen here that I think our auditor, one of our auditors, is here, and I think Glenn Hankinson, who is a consultant that has been a big help to the superintendent's office, is here, but and Andy, of course, is there. So between and among us, we'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you, Jigs. Are there any other board members who wish to speak to the motion before I move to the voters? All right. Priscilla?
I'm not quite sure what he meant on he hadn't been able to verify the reduction. I mean, that is the figure that we came up with that we are presenting. So I think I'm trying to figure out, and if I'm wrong in this, he will need to correct me. I mean, that is the figure that we are definitely taking to the taxpayers because it was based on what our principals and the boards brought to us as far as expenses. I'm wondering if what he is talking about is the fact that there are still some assessments out there that the SU has not reconciled to give us back to Rockingham money, but that will end up being given back in this year, and you'll probably end up with surpluses at the end of this year as a result of that money, because we did come up with the fact that there were certain assessments that were not done with the prior business office manager and that are being done at this point.
Priscilla and Ray, I'm sorry. Yes, Priscilla, you are wrong. The problem is not in the 9,000,007 that we're proposing for the budget. The problem is in reconciling the 10,000,007 that is shown in our summary sheets as what the budget was in 2022. So that's where the confusion is that I have, is verifying that 10,000,007 figure from 2022, not the 9,000,007 figure that we're recommending for the budget.
Ray, thank you for that clarification, because that's not our budget. That's the previous year's budget that he can't recognize. And that wasn't clear. So I'm glad he made that clear.
Yep. No, I think that's helpful to everybody. Is there anybody here in the assembly who wishes to speak to the motion? Is there anybody at home on Zoom who wishes to speak to the motion? And I'll ask my town manager to keep his eyes peeled for a hand up. Nobody. All right, with no further discussion, we will move on to Article 3. Article 3, to see if the Rockingham Town School District will apply the sum of $350,000 from the fiscal year 2021 fund balance to offset expenditures in the fiscal year 2024 in order to reduce taxes. And Megan Applegate, I believe you were going to move this motion.
Thank you. I move the Rockingham Town School District will apply the sum of $350,000 from the fiscal year 2021 fund balance to offset expenditures in the fiscal year 2024 in order to reduce taxes.
And do we have a second? Second, thank you. And Ms. Applegate, do you wish to speak to your motion? Okay. Does anybody on the board wish to address the motion before we have discussion from the general public?
I would like to.
Is that Jigs?
Yeah, I'll wait.
Okay. All right, you're up.
Okay. I think that these next several articles 3 through 9 need a kind of an introduction. At the best numbers, the audited numbers that we're working from, at June 30th, 2021, Rockingham had a surplus of $2,287,000. Now, that is made up of a budget surplus that existed at the end of 2020 of $1,526,000, and then a budget surplus in fiscal 21 of $761,000. The 2020 surplus obviously should have been dealt with at the annual meeting last year, but it wasn't, again, because of the confusion and chaos at the school department. So this represents basically the combination of the 2 years of budget surpluses. Now, of that $2,287,000, $272,000 was recorded in years prior to 2020, and those funds are being used to offset taxes in this coming year, 2023. So if you looked at the revenue number in the tax sheet, part of the revenue that you see there is the $272,000. That leaves approximately $2,015,000 as of June 30th, 2021. And these next several articles will add up to that number. And it's the board's best attempt to try to use these funds over the next several years to, again, help allay future taxes or future tax increases. So anyway, that's just a little bit of an introduction to these numbers.
Thank you, Jigs. Anybody else wish to speak to the article? Priscilla?
I really appreciate Jigs making that clear, because that was basically a lot of what I would have said. I do want to mention that he mentioned the 272,000. He rounded that, but that's okay. That are lowering this year's taxes. That's approximately 172,000 in the vote that you took in March of 2019, and 100,000 that you took in the vote of March 2020. It would have been nice to have been able to address some of it last year at this time, but our business manager at that time was not giving us the surpluses, even though the board was trying to look at them and felt we did have a lot of surplus there that we could have given you then. But by spreading it over the next 5 years, we are making your taxes not go up and down constantly, and having to have the equalized student count go up and down so much, because if that goes up and down, then the state looks at us more. And by keeping it standard and stable across the board, you can have more confidence in what your taxes are going to be over the next few years as well. So that's part of why we did this. But we have to look at each one of these motions separately. And so we probably won't have as much discussion on the next few. And Ray's grinning at me, so I know he's feeling the same way.
Well, we have to address each one separately. I understand that, but I'm guessing the explanation would be the same for Articles 4, 5, 6, and 7. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to the motion? Yes, Mr. Lambert. Dave, can I hold up, because Zoom people can't hear you without the mic.
I just wanted to point out that I've heard from a taxpayer who already voted in the town clerk's office that when this person came to the 5 money articles, he told me he voted for some and against some because he really didn't understand what was going on. I highly encourage everybody to vote yes on all of them to get money applied to your future taxes over the next 5 years.
Thank you, Dave. Anybody else wish to speak to the motion before we move on to the next article? All right, hearing none or seeing none, we will move on to Article 4. Yeah, and they're all the same numbers. So, Article 4, to see if the Rockingham Town School District will apply the sum of $350,000 from the fiscal year 2021 fund balance to create a reserve fund to offset expenditures in the fiscal year 2025 in order to reduce taxes. Jason, I believe you're the maker of that motion.
Yes, thank you, Ray. Yes, I move that the Rockingham Town School District will apply the sum of $350,000 from fiscal year 2021 fund balance to create a reserve fund to offset expenditures in the fiscal year 2025 in order to reduce taxes to be voted by Australian ballot.
Do we have a second? Thank you. Having heard the discussion of the previous article, is there any further discussion on this article, which is identical except that the surplus is to be applied to fiscal year 2025? Hearing none, we'll move on to Article 5. To see if the Rockingham Town School District will apply the sum of $350,000 from the fiscal year 2021 fund balance to create a reserve fund to offset expenditures in the fiscal year 2026 in order to reduce taxes. And this being an odd number, Megan, we circle back to you.
I move the Rockingham Town School District will apply the sum of $350,000 from the fiscal year 2021 fund balance to create a reserve fund to offset expenditures in the fiscal year 2026 in order to reduce taxes to be voted on by Australian ballot.
Can I get a second? Second. Thank you. Again, identical article, except that these funds are to be applied to fiscal year 2026. I assume there's no further discussion, and I will move on to Article 6. Article 6, to see if the Rockingham Town School District will apply the sum of $350,000 from the fiscal year 2021 fund balance to create a reserve fund to offset expenditures in the fiscal year 2027 in order to reduce taxes. And Jason, I'm coming back to you.
I move that the Rockingham Town School District will apply the sum of $350,000 from the fiscal year 2021 fund balance to create a reserve fund to offset expenditures in the fiscal year 2027 in order to reduce taxes to be voted on by Australian ballot.
Can I get a second? Second. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Moving on to Article 7. To see if the Rockingham Town School District will apply the sum of $200,000 from the fiscal year 2021 fund balance to create a reserve fund to offset expenditures in the fiscal year 2028 in order to reduce taxes. And Megan, we're back to you.
I move the Rockingham Town School District will apply the sum of $200,000 from the fiscal year 2021 fund balance to create a reserve fund to offset expenditures in the fiscal year 2028 in order to reduce taxes, to be voted on by Australian ballot.
Can I get a second? Thank you. Assuming that there is no further discussion, although this amount is different, it's 200,000. Does anybody wish to discuss Article 7? Hearing none, we'll move on to Article 8. Article 8, to see if the Rockingham Town School District will apply the sum of $315,156.44 from the fiscal year 2021 fund balance to create a reserve fund to be used for capital improvements at the Rockingham schools and authorize the board to expend said funds. Jiggs, I believe that's your motion.
Right. I move that voters apply the sum of $315,156.44 from the fiscal year 2021 fund balance to create a reserve fund to be used for capital improvements at the Rockingham schools and authorize the board to spend said funds.
Can I get a second? Thank you. Is there discussion under Article 8?
Ray, I'd just like to comment. This obviously is the article that uses up the rest of the money. That's why the accuracy down to the penny. But if the voters approve this, this will put our capital reserve at over $900,000, which again is going to help out greatly in the near future to address some of the bigger issues that our 3 school buildings face. So again, it's trying to utilize this fund balance to smooth out or lessen the impact of future capital expenditures on our taxpayers.
And Jiggs, you mentioned 3 school buildings. For those of the people here who do not know, what 3 school buildings is Rockingham responsible for?
That's the Saxons River Elementary School, the Central Elementary School, and the Bellows Falls Middle School.
All right, thank you very much. Is there any discussion under Article 8? Yes, Peter. Mr. Golick. I guess you got to hold that down.
I'll ask the question, it's kind of redundant, but I'll ask it anyway. Can you give us some idea what you have in mind for plans to spend this money on? These schools were recently renovated. Central and Saxon River are the oldest ones, but middle school is only about 5 years out. So I'm just curious as to what some of the improvements you might want to make.
I'll take a stab at it. How time flies, Peter, but the middle school renovation was done in about 2013, 2014. So time does go on. Basically, both Central and the middle school are going to need roof work. When we did the middle school renovation, we replaced part of the roof. We couldn't afford to do the entire roof. So this will handle the part of the roof that wasn't done back in 2014 and secure the building. I'm not real sure what the problem is. The Saxons River and Central renovations were done in 2005, 2006. So we're we're at the 15-year point there, and but it has been reported to us from the superintendent that there is some roof work to be done there. So those are the two biggest items at this point.
Is there any further discussion on Article 8? Hearing none, we'll move on to, Priscilla?
Andy, do you want to does Andy want to comment on maybe some of the other renovations that might need to be, just so that that are
Priscilla,
coming
can you move
up?
your mic up just a little bit?
Oh, sorry. Andy might want to comment on some of the other renovations that are coming up. We haven't done anything for several years because of COVID. Everything's kind of been put off. I know the boilers, we talked about boilers and we talked about some of the other things. So maybe Andy can just give us a little bit of an update.
Superintendent Haas, do you want to add to
Sorry.
Jiggs's comments?
I'll see what I can do. So some of it is we've been looking with the ESSER committee on how we can apply funds from the ARP ESSER for infrastructure. And so everything you do with ESSER has to have a COVID related reason. And so not every reason is going to happen. So but some of the updates and renovations are in heating and cooling systems throughout our buildings. And then also some of it is security related. We have the security systems are outdated and they're not all the same across all of our buildings. And so that makes it hard to support throughout the time. There's also some doors at Central that are needing updating, and some windows. As Jiggs mentioned, there's roofing that is a big piece. The Saxons River roof is really more of it's a small project. There's also a lot with water pumps and in our heat, just the heating systems and moving, making sure we can move air and heat effectively. And that's why we're looking at ESSER funds to deal with movement or controlling spread of virus. I'm just looking, so there's some masonry work at the middle school, some irrigation system. We also have the systems that actually control, Ricky, I'm going to borrow you here on this if I can. The systems that control our heating systems need updating, is that correct? So the actual brain behind what controls the system needs to be updated. And those are all, they can all be quite costly.
Any further discussion on Article 8? Gary Fox. That button.
Will the changes to the heating and cooling systems, are those the COVID related ones? Will they, will they involve fresh air exchange? And do you have a goal for, how many replacements of fresh air per hour or anything like that?
I don't have hard numbers in front of me, but it's my understanding that would be the point, especially if it was a COVID related, to use ESSER funds. It has to clear the air a certain way. One of the things we're also looking at doing is bringing in an outside group to do a facilities audit of all of our facilities, so that we aren't just kind of guessing, that we're purposely making the right choices.
Any further discussion on Article 8? If not, we'll move on to Article 9. Article 9, to see if the Rockingham Town School District will apply the sum of $100,000 from the fiscal year 2021 fund balance to create a reserve fund to be used for purchase of property to enhance the operations of the Rockingham schools. And Jiggs, I believe you're the mover of this motion as well.
Right. To see that I move that the Rockingham Town School District apply the sum of $100,000 of the fiscal 2021 fund balance to create a reserve fund to be used for purchase of property to enhance the operations of the Rockingham schools.
And do we have a second? Thank you. Jiggs, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, again, to my knowledge, we do not have a specific property, or the board has not discussed any specific property to be purchased. I think all of you know that both the middle school and central are pretty much landlocked, and those two schools would be the more likely ones to benefit from this article. And again, we just think it's a wise thing to do, and so that's our recommendation.
Is there any further discussion of Article 9? Peter?
Rockingham Select Board Chair. As Jig just mentioned, Central School and Middle School are landlocked, and there is an esteemed property that was just brought up, the old YMCA location, and rumor mill out there has it that that's some of the project that the school was looking for. It's the desire of the select board at this time to see that sold to a tax producing entity. If it goes to the school, it's tax exempt and we get nothing except possibly the amount that it costs us to just demolish that building back. So just something to keep in mind.
Any further discussion under Article 9? Hearing none, we'll move on to Article 10. Article 10, to see if the Rockingham Town School District will vote to pay its district officers compensation in the amounts of board chair, $700, board members, $600, and treasurer, $400. And Jason, I don't think it's a conflict of interest, but I understand you're the mover of this motion.
I move that the Rockingham Town School District will vote to pay its district officers compensation in the amounts of board chair, $700, board members, $600, and treasurer, $400, to be voted on by Australian ballot.
Do we have a second? Thank you. Is there any discussion on Article 10? All right. Our next and final article, Article 11, to transact any other business to be brought before the town district meeting. Is there anyone who wishes to bring forth a motion for discussion under Article 11? Mr. Reese.
Paul Reese from Bellows Falls. The only thing I'm concerned with, I'm happy with what the school board's members have done, the superintendent and everything. But what I've really watched and I'm concerned about is actually the number of students in these three buildings. I honestly believe down the road, one of the schools could be closed if you actually look at the numbers and make some decisions and maybe expand some students up to the high school, which only has 326 when it was built for 720. I really don't think we need down the road 3 schools.
Thank you, Paul. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak under Article 11? Priscilla.
Yeah, I would like to honor Jason Benson for his service to the board for the last 2 years. He's not going to be running for a seat again, and so he won't be with us next year. I've appreciated his contributions and wish to present him with a certificate of appreciation for his service. Thank you, Jason, for your attendance and careful consideration of business brought to the meetings. He is here by Zoom tonight and will not be at the board next year. I will see that the certificate is delivered to him. I wish to also thank Megan Applegate for serving as clerk of the board and Jim McAuliffe for his astute analysis of the budget.
Thank you, Priscilla, and well-deserved remarks. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak under Article 11? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Second? In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.